Some people don't know how to take care of their own lives. I always knew that my neighbor was weird, but until then, her weirdness had been nothing more than crooked looks and random grumbles. I never thought she'd be capable of freaking out over a piece of cloth waving in the wind. It was an ordinary morning. I had my coffee, enjoyed the silence of the neighborhood, and went out to hang my Trump flag in the yard. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple flagpole next to the garage. For me, it was just a decoration. For her, apparently, it was a war crime. I noticed that she was standing on the sidewalk, looking at my house as if she had just seen a live sacrifice. She crossed her arms, pressed her lips together, and stood still, staring at the flag as if it offended her personally. I expected her to move on, grumble to herself, and go about her business. But no, she stood there, burning her vision with pure hatred. I did what any sensible person would do. I ignored it. I went back into the house and carried on with my day, never imagining that this woman would spend the next few hours making up a completely insane plan to get rid of the threat in my backyard. Towards the middle of the afternoon, I began to hear a strange noise coming from outside. Something metallic, followed by a grunt and a muffled noise, as if someone had stumbled into existence. I went to the window, and what I saw almost made me spit out my coffee. There she was, climbing over my fence like a possessed raccoon. Dressed in too tight pants and a faded sweatshirt, the woman was clinging to the top of the fence, trying to reach my flag with one hand. Her face was red, probably from anger mixed with a physical effort she clearly wasn't used to making. It was then that I realized what had happened. She hadn't thought the plan through. In the middle of trying to pull down the flag, her leg got caught between the fence posts. Now she was dangling there, unable to climb down or up, flailing about as if that was going to solve her situation. And the best thing? She had no idea that I was watching. I stood still for a moment, absorbing the surreal scene. She tried one last tug on the flag, but ended up off balance, forcing her leg further into the railing and letting out a muffled cry of pain. And it was at that moment that I knew it was far from over. If there was a limit to that woman's humiliation, she definitely didn't know it. Still standing at the window, I watched the unbelievable scene unfold. The neighbor was still there, half hanging on the fence, half stuck like a piece of clothing forgotten on the clothesline. The physical effort had taken its toll. Her face was as red as a tomato, and her disheveled hair looked like a bird's nest after a hurricane. She struggled as if the force of hatred could free her from the trap she had created for herself. Every uncoordinated attempt to break free only made her feel more trapped, more ridiculous. It was then that she finally realized she had an audience. Our eyes met, and her expression changed from pure hatred to something between panic and despair. She knew I had seen everything. For a moment, I thought she was going to swallow her pride and ask for help. Perhaps a simple, "get me out of here," or, who knows, an impromptu apology to try and save what little dignity she still had left. But no, she did exactly what anyone without a shred of common sense would do.
This is your fault.
Yes, that's right. She managed to get stuck in my fence, in my yard, trying to rip down my flag. But somehow it was my fault. I crossed my arms and just watched, waiting to see where her stubbornness would take her. She tried again, pulling her leg tighter, but only succeeded in getting herself even deeper into the problem. She let out a grunt of pain and frustration. Then, a fantastic detail struck me. She wasn't alone. Across the street, some neighbors were already standing around, watching the scene with a mixture of confusion and amusement. Some were whispering among themselves, while others were simply recording with their cell phones, because, of course, a spectacle like this deserved to be immortalized on the internet. The woman realized that she was becoming a public attraction and began to go into full desperation mode. She looked around, probably trying to find a minimally dignified way out. But there wasn't one. That's when she did the unthinkable. She started screaming for her husband. That's right. Instead of calling for help like a normal person, she decided to call for reinforcements as if she were the victim of a brutal attack and not her own stupidity. Now, things were going to get good. The woman continued to wail on the fence, now screaming her husband's name as if she were being attacked by a swarm of killer bees. But apparently, he wasn't listening. Or, more likely, he was listening and wisely deciding to pretend he wasn't. The neighbors, on the other hand, were completely attentive to the spectacle. Some laughed quietly, others recorded discreetly, and there was even a lady with her arms crossed, shaking her head as if she were witnessing the confirmation of everything she already suspected about this woman. For a brief moment, I thought I'd just ignore her and let her fend for herself. But then it occurred to me, if this crazy woman gets really hurt, she'll find a way to blame it on me. So I took a deep breath, gathered up all the patience I didn't have, and went to try to help. If you stop struggling, I can let you go. She looked at me as if I had just suggested that she thank me for my help.
I don't need your help.
Good. So I was just going to hang there until I rotted. I snorted and tried again. I approached slowly, holding on to the fence so as not to cut myself, and put my hand out to help her support herself. If she made the slightest coordinated effort, she might be able to get out of there without further damage. But that's when her insanity reached a new level. As soon as my hand came close, she went into attack mode. With the agility of a caged animal, she started kicking everywhere. The first kick grazed my leg. The second almost hit my stomach. On the third, I stepped back in time to avoid taking a direct hit. The woman was no longer trying to get out of there. She was trying to hit me. The audience loved it. The neighbors were stunned. Some laughed out loud. The old man next door even let out a whistle. "Is she trying to hit him?" someone muttered. Yes, that's exactly what was happening. I could have kept trying to help, but what's the point? If someone is sinking and, instead of accepting help, starts throwing punches at anyone who reaches out, then let them sink alone. I stepped back and took my cell phone out of my pocket. "Hello, police?" She froze. For the first time, she seemed to realize that her strategy of spinning around like an angry pawn might not have been the best choice. But now, it was too late. The woman stopped struggling the moment she realized I was serious. The word police had a magical effect. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she seemed to consider that maybe, just maybe, she had made a series of wrong decisions up to that point. But the problem was that now the damage had already been done. Across the street, the neighbors were more amused than ever. Some didn't even disguise it anymore, laughing openly at the scene. Others whispered among themselves, exchanging glances of pure delight. The old man who had whistled earlier was now sitting in his own garden chair, enjoying the spectacle as if it were a live show. And then, as if the universe had decided to crown this moment, I heard the siren approaching. The police car turned the corner, and 2 vehicles pulled up in front of my house. That's right, 2. Because apparently someone in the neighborhood had also called the authorities after seeing a woman climbing over someone else's fence and kicking the owner of the house. The policemen got out of their cars with the tired look of someone who has seen it all and knows that the day is far from over. One of them, a tall man with an impatient look on his face, got straight to the point. "What's going on here?" I took a step back, pointing at the pitiful figure still tangled in the fence. Well, I was at home, living my life, when I saw this woman trying to rip down my flag. In the process, she got stuck. I tried to help, but she started kicking me. And now we're here. The policeman looked at her, who until then had been silent, probably trying to think of some miraculous excuse. "Is that true?" he asked, in a voice that already made it clear that he wasn't in the mood for bullshit. It was then that the real comedy began. She started crying, out of nowhere, just like that without warning. The tears came out as if someone had pressed a secret button. The crying wasn't convincing, but it was dramatic enough for her to try to play the victim.
He attacked me. I was just walking past and tripped. He threatened me.
The policeman didn't even blink. He just crossed his arms and looked around. The neighbors were all holding back their laughter, and the old man in the lawn chair even let out an audible, "Oh, for heaven's sake." The other policeman, who had only been watching until then, pointed to one of the houses. The camera in that house caught everything. It was as if her crying had been cut with a knife. The change in expression was instantaneous. First came shock, then despair, and finally the expression of someone who knew she was completely screwed. The woman still tried to mumble something, but nothing made sense. The policeman exchanged a brief glance before one of them finally sighed. "You have 2 options. You can get out of that fence now, and we'll sort this out as best we can, or we'll get you out of there and take you straight to the police station." This time, she didn't scream, she didn't shout, she didn't kick anyone. She just put her head down and stood there, mulling over her own shame. But the best moment was yet to come, the time to finally let her go. The woman was trapped, not physically, because she was still tangled in the fence like a cat that tried to jump and miscalculated, but mentally. All her plans had failed. She hadn't managed to tear down the flag, she hadn't managed to blame me, she hadn't managed to escape before the police arrived. Now all that remained was the final moment, the official rescue and the most humiliating walk of his life. The policemen, no longer patient, decided they weren't going to waste any more time. One of them stepped forward and held her leg firmly, while the other lifted the top of the fence to make room. "If you cooperate, this will go quickly." She, who had been silent until then, reacted again.
Watch out, you're going to hurt me.
Because, of course, now she was a victim. But the police weren't the least bit worried by her theatrics. In a few seconds, they managed to get her off the fence and onto her feet. Her pants were dirty, her hair was a complete mess, and her expression was a mixture of anger and humiliation. The problem? It wasn't over yet, because now she needed to explain what the hell she was doing there. The policeman picked up his notebook and got straight to the point. "Right, so, do you want to explain to us why you're trespassing on his property?" The silence was awkward. She opened her mouth, hesitated, looked around, as if searching for a magic answer that would erase everything that had happened. But there was no such answer. The audience was all there, watching her grand finale. The neighbor who recorded everything, the old man who had become her biggest critic, the people who had come out to see the chaos live. She realized there was no escape. It was then that she made the only possible move to try and preserve what was left of her dignity. She turned her back and started walking towards her house. She simply ignored the police, the neighbors, logic, and reality. As if he thought that if he walked fast enough, it would all be erased from the collective memory, but it wasn't. The policemen looked at each other, shrugged, and wrote something down in their notebooks, without even bothering to go after her. They probably realized that public humiliation was punishment enough. I, on the other hand, was satisfied. The flag was still in place, firm and intact, waving in the wind as if nothing had happened. And the woman? Well, she never looked me in the face again. And I'm truly grateful for that every day. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel and like it. Do you want to see more Karens screwing up and embarrassing themselves? We've put together 2 videos that you'll love. Just click on the card on the screen. See you in the next one.